All right, all right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Tea with Pastor Lynne. I am so excited to have you back with me on today as we have a great conversation in store for you. But I want you to do a couple of things for me. I want you to get your tea. And I want you to sit back and relax. And as we talk about the tea, get your water, your coffee, whatever it is, and just get yourself in a comfortable position so we can then begin to have this wonderful conversation on today. The other thing I want you to do, if you're looking at viewing us through Facebook, or if you're viewing through YouTube, I want you guys to make sure that you share. YouTubers, like that bell. I want you to make sure that you subscribe to our channel and make sure that you share with everyone. I believe that you all are going to be blessed on today. So here we go. Make sure that you comment. Make sure that you give us your questions because we want to have an interactive time with you on today. So as we move forward today, we are going to be talking about women in ministry and using your voice of influence. And today I have my wonderful, wonderful friend with us on today, Miss Danielle Chom, right?
Tom.
Tom. Yeah, I almost got it right. Listen, let me just tell you a little bit about her, and then I'm going to turn it over to her. Danielle is a faith-based organizer that staffs the Sacramento Black Clergy Caucus, a formative space for Black clergy to provide peer support and collectively imagine the future of the Black church. She has over 10 years of experience in advocacy, public policy, and equipping faith leaders with the tools to live out their values through social action. She previously worked with congregations across race and faith traditions to advance police accountability, violence intervention and prevention, and gender justice. She holds a Master of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary and a Bachelor's of Art in Political Science from the University of California in Berkeley. Listen, this woman right here, we go way back, and I am just so glad and blessed that God has crossed our paths again. And I'm telling you, she has a wealth of knowledge. She is passionate about what she does. I want you guys to welcome for me, Sister Danielle. Yes, thank you for being with us on today, Danielle. I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Pastor Lynne. It has been exciting for us to come back again after all these years. I think that was 10 years ago.
10 years, yeah.
When we were in ministry. And so, I'm just happy to be here, happy to share. And, this topic about women and using our voices, it's something that it comes up often. And it's something that I talk to my girlfriends about all the time, right? I think as women, you grow up in this society, and there's so many messages that come our way that tell us you need to make yourself smaller. You need to be respectable. You need to be quote unquote feminine, which is like this white European notion of whatever they think femininity is that we don't fit into, right? Which often means being smaller, being quieter, not raising your voice, different things like that. And, even though many of us will come from strong mothers and grandmothers who are fierce, sometimes these messages in society can get to us. And so, and sometimes these messages can be found in our communities or even in our families as women. And so it's important for us to take a moment to sit, reflect, and think about what are the ways that those messages might be getting into our psyche and impacting us living into our fullest authentic selves. So
wonderful. Look, I'm excited. We're going to dive into this then. I'm so excited because we do know that we have been muted for many years. So, of course, Danielle, I'm much older, but I think that even in my generation and the generations now, we are still dealing with the same issue of women having to fight for their voice to be heard, right? We still hear that whole thing that women, you just sit down, be quiet, let the men do the work. You guys just make sure that we have everything we need to do the work. But there's a yearning and a burning inside of us, right? That God has put inside us that is causing us and pushing us to articulate
Mm-hmm.
that thing, that fire that's burning in us. Let's talk about it if we can for a second. What is the value, the value of us as women utilizing our voices, especially when we know traditionally it has not been acceptable? How do we as women now find the value in using our voices?
Um, I in my personal experience, I have found women to be very prophetic, and God speaks to and through women. As we said earlier, various theological interpretations of the text, or various theologies and various interpretations of the text have contributed to what women experience, not just in
Mm.
Christian community, but it's also in a number of faith communities, right? And so, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. What was the question we were saying? Just gonna.
Yeah, we're just talking about how important is it for us to see the value in our voice,
Yes,
in essence.
yes, and so I think to know that one, God and Spirit speaks through women. I think we just have to constantly remember that. I can think
Mm.
of times, and I want to encourage people to think of times in their life when seeing the impact of when a woman spoke up or spoke truth, or led. What did that look like? What was the outcome? I can think of so many examples where transformation has come about. Um,
Mm.
when I think of just the leadership of my mother in our household, she's very smart. My mom's like, she should have been a lawyer. She's a principal though, which is awesome. you know, like all the input that she put into our family, into raising all of us, and into the decisions that they made. My parents made. Like, how can I look at that and think that I, as a woman, need to diminish myself? How can I look
Mm.
at the examples of Harriet Tubman, right? The examples of so many of our ancestors. How can I look at, the women who have spoken up and who have led and who have led to transformation and still think that, oh, well, I'm not sure if I have something to contribute or it's not appropriate for me to speak at this moment. So, I would say definitely lean on to
Mm.
examples from the ancestors that you see, and then also from the women that you see in your life. And also look at the biblical text and you'll see examples. And I like to look at examples within the biblical text of women being prophetic, of women leading.
Yeah.
um and and I think the Bible has some examples, but it's not exhaustive. So look at canons outside of the tradition that can also um really give you that big picture of the power that women have. I know for me myself, I glean a lot from the female orishas in the Ifa tradition from Nigeria. I glean a lot
Mm.
from African, female deities and African traditions. And so, and what I see is that women are given wisdom, women are given power, and it's important for us to act on it. Important for us to recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We
Yeah.
got to recognize it and then act on it. And even, it's so funny because I saw a conversation online when they're like, women are just emotional and men are logical. And I'm like, emotional, I love it. That means I have a connection to the divine.
Okay.
My
Okay.
emotions are an intuition about some things that are really going on because logic
Mhm.
doesn't see everything. And that is that balance that we bring to the table. And so just
Yeah.
recognizing the world would be so much better with us living into our full power.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. I think that because we have been told um, that when we step up is it's so unfeminine, right? Like the speaking out is so unfeminine, like it's like aggressive. We're too aggressive. We don't know our place, or our opinions are too strong. Like it shouldn't be that strong. And you're right. I think that we as women first have to understand and accept that we do have value. There is value in our voices. I remember coming up, my grandfather, he who was a patriarch, but we respected him, right, as the head of the house. But my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
it was her voice. It was her that literally led the house.
Right.
And not diminishing my grandfather's authority at all, but
Mm-hmm.
knowing that she was the one, she was the nurturer, she was the disciplinary. It
Mm-hmm.
was my grandmother who did all of that. So I learned how to be a very strong woman very early on, very early on, by learning those things from my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in talking about that, as we discover who we are, as we discover our voices, sometimes we don't discover it in such a subtle way. Sometimes we discover it in this outrage, this time of outrage. And let's talk about trusting that outrage, trusting the value of the outrage of our voice. Not that we're trying to beat somebody up, but there's something that burns inside that says I must speak up. I if I don't handle it, it's not going to happen. Let's talk about trusting the outrage of our voice.
Yeah, it's funny as you're saying that, a story came to mind. And this was a point when I was thinking logical, but I was with a strong mother who went with her anger and her emotions and got the job done. I was remember Sister Deborah, and her son you know, was struggling with mental health and was in the system. And we were in
Yeah.
court one day, and she said to me, and I forget the details, but she says, "We need this done. I'm gonna write a note to the prosecutor." And I was like, "Wait, but that's outside of the rules. You can't do this." She's like, "I don't care." Oh no, we need it. I said, she wrote the note. She walked up there and she put that note down. The judge is like, "You're out of order. You're out of order." Da, 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 da. And then she walks back. And I remember the prosecutor looked at it, and I was like, "Hmm." And then basically granted what she wrote.
Mm.
I was like, "Oh, oh wow, that was a teaching moment for me."
Yeah.
Right? That was a teaching moment for me, and it was like just another example of just the prophetic power um, of women. I'm
Yeah.
so much going on. Could you repeat the question, and then I'll dive deeper into it?
So we're talking about us trusting the outrage of our voice, right? Um,
Yes.
and I remember Sister Deborah in that incident of
Hmm.
her using her outrage,
Yes.
right, to articulate
Yes.
the changes that needed to come forth. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And like she said, it changed the atmosphere when she stepped into her full power and spoke
Mm,
up on behalf of her son, and also spoke up for the many, many people who are grappling with mental health illness and then end up in the criminal justice system.
yeah.
And she continues to use her voice today. And, when I think of the power of women, Sister Deborah is one of the women that I think about. And that power of her voice,
Mm.
at times stronger than even stronger than clergy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that we have to be able to recognize the various ways that power shows up. And women do have that prophetic gift. And when I think about the prophets of the Bible, many of them were angry. I mean, you want to talk about emotional. They were angry and they were emotional. Okay, they were
Yeah.
angry at the injustices of the world. They're angry at, not living according to the will of God, just violating all the rules, treating our neighbors like trash, you know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
prioritizing riches and money over taking care of the least of these, exploiting the poor. These were the things that the biblical prophets were angry and mad about.
Mm-hmm.
And these these are the things that many women are angry and mad about and are uh, talking about a lot about injustice. I think
Yeah.
like because we don't the emotions that we have drive us to action. It drives us
Absolutely.
to action. I think coming from having worked in the policy land in Sacramento. I was at the state capitol, worked at the state capitol for 2 years, learned a lot, right? But I definitely saw a lot of analysis paralysis.
Mm.
When you're in that logic mode and
Yeah.
looking over the policies, looking over this does that, da, 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 and the energy and the power that a woman brings in the room is like, okay, how is that affecting the people who are most impacted? What kind of pain are they feeling? What
Mm-hmm.
to do to alleviate their pain? And this anger that we have when we see injustice, it drives us into action. And I'm not saying, hey folks, whatever pops up on your emotions or what have you, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying don't push it away. If you feel some kind of way, just sit and say, okay, one, I'm feeling this kind of way. Two,
Yeah.
what does this mean? God, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to show me and communicate with this emotion that I'm feeling? That emotion is a channel to the divine,
Yeah.
something that we should never ever throw away.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that when we can see that our outrage is not just for us, our outrage is because of what we see, what other people need. I think that's one of the things I do love about Sister Deborah. Sister Deborah, and not just the instance of her son, but ever since I've known her,
Yeah.
she has always been one who was going to stand for righteous. Like right is right and wrong is wrong. And I've
Mhm.
always loved and appreciated and admired that about her. But I think that when we as women, when we can say, God has given me this outrage for a reason, right? He didn't give it to me just to sit on. It's not for me to feel comfortable with, but
Right.
it is for me to begin to look at the injustices. It
Mhm.
is for me to look at the people and how it is affecting them. How is it driving them? How is it depressing them or oppressing them? And it is for me to say, how do I use this now in order to speak up for a community that does not have a voice or will not be heard, or because people are afraid of them. They're afraid to hear what they have to say. They're afraid when they begin to speak up. And I think you're right. We as women have a prophetic voice.
Mhm.
Although it's emotional, it is a prophetic voice that keeps us connected.
Yeah.
And it is a prophetic voice that pushes us into a place of action.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's not just logically thinking. We can't just sit on logic all the time, right? There
Exactly.
has to be some type of action. And it is the woman's heart, I believe, that pushes us to say, no matter what, I am going to stand up for that woman, or that child who is hurting. I'm not gonna let the school system kick my child out of school. We were just talking about the school system, and we were talking about how every time a black child does something wrong, the school system wants to peg them with ADHD, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden we want to put this label on our children. And this mother has been fighting about this label, this title, this stigma to be removed out of her son's jacket.
Mm.
And she's going through this fight, and her thought process, I'm not just fighting for my kid, I'm fighting for every Black kid that will have to deal with this issue as they come along in school, and
Right,
especially in the foundational years of elementary.
right,
So that's where it starts. Once it starts there, they just keep compiling. And so her fight is, I will not sit down and allow these children to experience injustice
right,
of
right,
putting something on them that they don't deserve. And
right.
yeah, that's that righteous anger, right? That righteous frustration.
And it makes me think, and I hope I get this right. And I'm pulling this from my sister, uh, Mora, Only Love Alston. She's with the Hebrew, the Messianic Hebrew community, and she often talks about, there's so many things people pull out from the Bible to hush women up, right? And one of them is, God made woman to be Adam's helpmeet, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the lines is like, okay, you're stepping outside of the helpmeet, right? And so she broke down the Hebrew of that, and I hope I'm getting this right, but it's called Ezer Kenegdo, Ezer Kenegdo. And when she broke it down, and she talks about how I think the word Ezer means help, but it's more around saving, right? Is what talks about
Mm.
saving. And then it's also in reference to being a warrior. Now that's a little different from what we hear in terms of the help me
Yeah.
in the kitchen in the home or doing the admin, right? So it talks about like the warrior who is on an equal plane,
Mm.
on an equal plane with the partner. And so if you could look it up, if people want to look it up, more Only Love Alston with Prophetic Whirlwind Ministry. And so that, what you described with the mother and her fight for her son, her sister Deborah, I mean, we're seeing some warrior in it, right? And
Yeah.
it's all about balance when I think about the different gifts and the qualities that we all bring to the table, right? We balance each other out. Um,
Absolutely.
one day I'm a warrior, you know. The next day I'm a rester. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Next
Yeah.
day, I'm a joker. I mean, it's like, but we have these hats that we can pull on if we need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I when I think about Adam and Eve and Eve being the helpmate, it oftentimes bring me to some of the men that I have been very blessed and privileged to have in my life as examples of men, and seeing how these men empower and encourage their wives, right?
Yeah.
To walk forward, to speak, to articulate, to be who God created them to be. One of my grandfather is one who's gone on to be with the Lord, but one that I have watched since I was 15 years old would be McGemo Johnson,
Mm,
and just his soft spoken, his the way he just encourages, the way he silently pushes,
mm,
like he
mm.
silently pushes, and his love for that particular aspect of his wife, and not just his wife but other women, to
Yeah.
articulate their voices, to empower them, to say to them, that you've been called to do this thing,
Mm,
affirming who
mm.
they are. The other one would probably be my husband. My husband, I remember when I first started in ministry, I did not want to. I was cool with being, let me just be honest, let's do some truth right now. I was cool with being in the background, right?
Yeah.
But I had this righteous anger inside of me, this righteous frustration inside of me, right? This righteous outrage, because I knew things needed to change. I knew that there needed to be a different voice. I knew that there needed to be a different outlook on how we were presenting the gospel. And I'm a pretty radical person, so I was just like, I'm just gonna say in the background. And it was my husband that said, "You need to walk and do what God told you to do. You need to use that voice." And he will oftentimes say, "I'm not the preacher. My wife is the preacher, right? My wife is the teacher." Not just this false building, but this sense, like Brother McGee, who says, "I affirm." Right, that voice that God has put inside of you. And I just, throughout my years, I have been blessed to see my late Pastor C.M. Cummings. He was another one, just being able to be empowered to have men. Thank you, Charles. Continue to pray for us, brother. Thank you so much, Pastor Charles. Yeah, just men who have been in prayer for us, men who have been standing and affirming and saying, "You have something to say, and we are going to encourage you." Not only we're going to encourage you, but we're going to push you into doing that thing. Because being my helpmate doesn't mean you stand behind me. Being my helpmate means that we walk this thing out together. And you walk in your strength and I walk in my strength, and we make it work together. And I think when we see that, you're right. When we see that, then we can begin to be okay, right, with this outrage that's inside of us. We won't see it as such a negative thing, and we won't see it as only one person has permission to speak out without outrage. That. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I love that, and that's I think I also would look at the various couples and see like, oh, okay, see how he's supporting his wife? That's what I want. That's what I want, and seeing those examples, and then seeing examples of like strong women in ministry, like I think of Pastor Swanigan and Pastor Lisa Swanigan, how he supported her. I think of there's Pastor Les and Katrina Simmons, about some Sacramento examples. And it's one of the things I really appreciate about my husband too. He's Muslim, so we're actually celebrating Eid today, which is the end of Ramadan. So we're going to be going out to dinner soon. But he's Muslim, and he respects all of my traditions, and he encourages me. And he doesn't know everything about what are the different titles and things. But he's like, yes, my wife is a pastoress. And I'm like, no, I
think I'm gonna start using that.
I'm not a pastor. I'm not even going that route. He's like, yeah, no, I see it. You're a pastoress, and I hear what he's saying in terms of there's something inside of you, but always having that support. And at times where I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe I should just lay low. And he's like, no, speak up, like go for it. It means so much to have a partner to where you don't have to make yourself small. But they are pushing you up. You are pushing them up. And those are the models, those are the examples that we should see, and celebrate. I mean, it's hard sometimes because you do have other examples, but I love what you said about honing in on those examples and lifting those up.
Yeah. Talitha said, positive male affirmation is very important to a woman's development and confidence. And that is so true. That is so true. I don't know that I would be as tenacious if my husband wasn't as supportive as he is. And he's not just supportive of my voice, but he's supportive of other women in my position, and just women in general who need to speak up, like that God has given them something, right? He's very supportive in that. So you're right. Thank you, Talitha. You're right. Positive male affirmation. Men, listen, this is not just for women. This is for men too. Your affirmation of your wife's or your significant other's voice is powerful. You will give them the strength to be confident in what it is that they are being called to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Uh, so, in saying that, and saying being confident,
Yeah.
let's talk about how important it is, Danielle, for us as women to refuse to be silent. Like, we have to refuse to be silent. We can't afford to be silent no more. Not the way this world is. We cannot afford to be silent anymore. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and to add on to the other point, on the other side, if there isn't an affirming male voice, what I've also found is a circle of women. A circle of women will gas you up.
Yes,
Like,
yes, yes,
yes, girl, go and do it, girl.
yes.
So even if you're lacking a male affirming voice, the sisterhood can
The
be so
sisterhood.
strong to hold you,
Mm-hmm.
you up for the times where you may be second guessing or not sure. And so, I strongly recommend. I have a cool gang of sisters that I rock with till this day, till this day. And
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I prayed to God for sisterhood and strong friends who would be with me. Because that's just how important it is to me in my life. And in terms of us not speaking, the telling ourselves to not silence ourselves. It is I will admit, like, it's it's a process, right? It's something that
Mm-hmm.
I still there are times where I still silence myself today.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I'm guilty.
You know,
I'm guilty.
I'm not like the most well, I catch myself, and it is a process of being a conscious and aware of the different voices we have internalized that
Mm.
contributes to the silence. And in creating the awareness around those voices, it's a lot of work that we have to do inside around that so that we can catch it when it comes, or we can pray for awareness and consciousness to root out those voices. And then having your supportive sisterhood and your supportive brothers, sometimes other people will pull it out of us too and say
Yeah.
that, hey, you're withholding yourself back. And sometimes the way I encourage myself to speak up is I think about what are the consequences if I don't share what God has put on my heart. What are the consequences?
Mm.
And
That's good.
not just necessarily for whoever might hear it, but what are the consequences for me?
Yeah.
I'm stuffing in. What does it look like to stuff in our full authentic self, and to constantly quiet and constantly second guessing what God gave us? What does
Yeah.
that do to our self-esteem? What does that do to our self-worth?
Mm-hmm.
Do to our mental health in the long run? And so, I'd say let it out. Whatever God has given you, let it out.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Jeff. Every fight is not your fight.
That too.
But I think though, a lot of times we hide behind that. We hide behind that whole quote, right? We say, oh well, this ain't my fight. Every fight is not my fight, because it becomes a place where we operate in fear. Lavia J said, I think it's expensive to be quiet sometimes. It costs more to be quiet than it does for us to speak up. And I really, I like that quote. And I like it, Danielle, because what it does say to us is that it's okay to be silent, but sometimes there are times when God is saying, speak, and your silence is going to cost us more, right? It's going to cost us more than it would if you spoke up. And so, what does that mean? That means that people are going to suffer because of our silence.
Mhm.
There are opportunities that are not going to happen because of our silence.
Mhm.
There's deliverance that's not going to go forth because of our silence.
Mhm.
There's a woman who's going to stay in a domestic violence situation because we're too afraid to speak up. And there's a child who's going to end up on the streets and again because we are afraid to speak up.
Right.
There's a mother whose child is going to get taken from them because we are afraid. We tell ourselves we can't say nothing to these kids nowadays. They're not going to accept what we have to say. But God is stirring something else in us and saying, no, I need you to speak up for this generation. They need to know how to parent. They need to know how to love their children. They need to know how to sit down and help their children with their homework and not put them in front of the TV or give them a video game. Like there are times, and I'm talking about practical silence. Like we think silence is just this big political realm, right? The
Right.
only time we only think the only time we're supposed to speak up is when a bill needs to be passed or
Right.
when somebody has gotten shot by another police. Now we need to articulate our voice. But what about those areas? What about those small times in our lives where God is saying, speak, and we don't take that advantage to speak? We don't take the opportunity and somebody suffers. Naomi says, sometimes I can't stand in my own lane. I will stand it for myself, period. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can't stay in your own lane. Sometimes you got to, Naomi, stand up for yourself. You got
That's
to.
a good point because I think because on the other hand, there can be times where, and I speaking from my own experience, right? It can be easier to speak up for others than to speak up for yourself. That's also another piece of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
That's another piece of consciousness is to self-preservation first and foremost, you know,
Absolutely.
and then speaking up on behalf of others, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. So sometimes you can't wait for other people to do it. You do have to stand up on your own. Thank you, Naomi, for that. Pastor Charles says there are people that need your voice. Your voice can be the life jacket they need.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, Pastor, I think about especially when you think about women in ministry and women preaching and the unique voice and experiences that we bring. And even when you looked at the themes and topics that may be preached about at times, sometimes it can fit a box, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
box is not reflective of the entire woman or, or even any other woman, men, or people who are non-binary. That box doesn't fit everybody's experiences. And so what
Yeah.
you hear heard from the pulpit, you may not hear pieces of
Right.
you coming out, and then you might think, oh, well, then that's not important. And
Mm.
like, no, that is important. It is important. And so, like for example, you had brought up domestic violence, right? Um, just imagine that being preached about more because, you know, I'd have to pull out the numbers, but I think it's 1 in 4. 1 in 4 women in the pews have experienced that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
hear that preached about a lot more. There are so many other experiences that women experience, and so when we talk about women speaking up, it's also women feeling empowered to say, "This is my context. This is my story. This is my
Yes.
experience."
Mm-hmm.
And God, God's given me some. I'm gonna share it. If it lands, it does. It lands. If it doesn't, that's fine. I'm just speaking my truth, right? And so I think about all of the unique life experiences, and I'm always thinking, what does that look like in a sermon? So,
Well, I think you're right. I think that we do, and I'm speaking from a pastor as a pastor. Um, There are some subjects I think that we do need to spend more time and talking about. We need to, and if we spend more time discussing these issues, I think not only does it empower the women, but it also empowers the men to
Yes,
make
yes,
different decisions, right? Not only am I empowering you as a
yes,
woman to know domestic violence is not okay, right?
right.
It is not okay. I also am empowering the men to
Yes,
know God says to love your wife the way that he loves the church. And he's not going to beat the church like that, right? He also says, if you go on and read in verse 27, he says, would you as a man hurt yourself? And
mm,
if you wouldn't do it to yourself, don't do it to your wife. That's what the Bible says.
right.
So when we talk about stuff like that, you're right. There are some things that need to be taught more over the pulpit. And I think a lot of the reasons that most pastors do not talk about these issues is because we are afraid, right,
Mm,
of the pushback we
mm,
will get
mm-hmm.
from our brothers and sisters or our fellow pastors or our fellow co-workers, laborers, I should. And not only that, from our own parishioners, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So from our own parishioners, that so I think there's a fear
yeah.
element that has to do with that makes people become silent. We mute our voices because we are afraid of what other people may think,
Mm,
what other people may say. We love you too, Christina. Thank you for joining us. um, I think that's a great subject, or a great understanding, is that where does it start? Where does it start? And since we know and we keep hearing over and over again that the church is where people are looking for guidance, right?
mm,
Those who sit in high spiritual positions are where people are looking for guidance, then you're right. We need to change our message. We
mhm,
need to start speaking to situations, and we need to start speaking to what it is that our people are experiencing in everyday life. And I have to say, I'm guilty.
mm,
I'm guilty. There are some of those subjects that I have not taught on.
mm,
We've talked about it in private in small groups, but it has not been a message over the pulpit. And I
mhm,
think you're right. We need to change
mm,
the trajectory. We need to change our method
mm,
of moving forth God's word.
mm.
So thank you that for now that you done just convicted my soul. Okay. Now that I'm convicted.
We all growing and learning together. That's what it's all about.
Amen. So, let's talk about that. Let's
Yeah,
talk about how do we how do we move from this place of needing to be liked and needing for people to give us permission to articulate our voice.
yeah. Ooh, growing edge. Now you calling me out, okay? So, yeah, I think that is a big thing, is liking to be liked. And one things that my mom always said growing up, she said she'd say something to the effect like, I ain't here to make friends. Straight up.
Yeah, that would be my generation.
Hey, that's a certain I want to make friends, mom. I ain't here to make friends, but you will respect me. That's how I'm not here to make friends, but you will respect me. You don't, and that's what it. You don't have to like me, but you will
You
respect
would respect me. Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
So that was always a hard pill to swallow, because I wanted to be liked.
Mm.
Necessarily the popular kid. So why am I going to throw away being liked? I want that. I don't want to offend people. So that also is, it's a growing, it's an area of I'm continuously growing. And what I have found is also resting on the wisdom of my mother. The times where I have spoken up and faced consequences, because let's be real, there are consequences for speaking up, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
I would rest on what my mom said, like, but I'm respected, because power will still recognize power. Take that hit of, okay, I'm not liked right now because I just spoke my truth. But then for me, at times, there's the comfort of, I spoke my truth. I was obedient to what Spirit put on my heart.
Yeah.
I can sleep at night. I
Yeah.
might have a smaller number of friends, but you know what? Friends can come and go, and you can go and find some more. I think as you get older, it might get harder, but I don't know. When you tell me it's harder to get new friends, I don't know. But
Well, I don't know that it's harder to get new friends as when you get my age, you're not worried about accumulating friends. Okay. So, I'm from your mama's generation, so that's why you may not like me, but you're gonna respect me, right?
Yeah, and so that's that's a thing. And I know for me, there are times when I know I gotta speak truth, and there's going to be consequences for it. And I think having the awareness that there will be consequences is good, because if you come in there blind and not realizing people don't like you, it's gonna hurt even more. But if you come in understanding what has happened to those who come before us who spoke up, I mean, let's keep it 100. MLK was not liked during his time. Only, I think they said only 10% of Black churches were
supporting him.
with Martin Luther.
Absolutely.
When when they do the polls to see your likability, before he died, I mean, he was not one. It was Black people who wasn't feeling him. So we like to revamp the history years later. Right? Same thing with Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells.
Yeah.
She had the campaign against lynching, and she wasn't well liked. Spoke a lot of power, and it was even Black folks that was keeping her out of certain rooms.
Yeah.
Okay, so we expect white folk to do their thing, right? I'll say we expect some racist white folk to do their thing, right? But when in her story, when you got other Black people that will block a door, it's like, oh, that's an extra hurt. Yes, even it be your own people sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a consequence. But I think this is where also faith comes in. Where faith comes in, trusting that God will carry you. You don't understand, and this has been just my personal experiences, just dealing with various struggles in my life. Spirit says to me, I know this looks crazy right now. Hold on. I'm going to get you to the other side. Yes, there's some pain. You're not going to like it. Hold on. I'm going to get you to the other side.
Absolutely.
That's where that faith comes in. And also, even in times where I have spoken up and there were consequences, there's always, I like to keep a really close knit circle of my sister girls and my friends. And these are people that I can lean on when I'm feeling weak. I think I haven't been at a place where I've been completely alone. I haven't been at that, but I've read that does happen. But for me, having that really close knit community, even if the friend is like, you know what, I don't see things necessarily how you did, but I'm for you speaking your truth. And I stand with you. You know what I mean? And of course, having my partner here who, always supports whatever I'm getting into or whatever I see. He be like the little cheerleader. I'd be like, so did this to me, and I said, they did what? No. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, even at times, I'm a poli-sci major. I think of strategy.
Okay.
I'm about to say something that gets me in trouble. Okay. let me piece this pillow together where I can land because there's gonna be some consequences. That's how my mind goes.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing, and I'm not going to tell my age, but in all my years, I have realized that when you make a decision to do what God has given you to do, 9 times out of 10, it is going to be very lonely. So walking in those places by myself, um, have happened, past and some present, right?
Mhm.
Being in these spaces by yourself. And I think Eve Ensler said that if a woman believe that they can be free, that they can have a voice, that they can do whatever they want, that they can have the right to and mandate to fight for it, anything can happen.
Mhm.
And so when we believe that we can have the freedom to articulate our voice, we as women can make anything happen.
Mhm.
When we stand up together, it was a woman who pulled them votes together in Atlanta, right?
Right, right, right,
Right.
right.
It was a woman who did that. So when we can see that we have power in our voices, right? We can speak our truth in spite of what other people may say. We're not afraid. We're not afraid. And you're right. You have to, though, come in understanding that there are some consequences. Naomi says sometimes friends aren't a good thing because they come with a load that comes with their friendship. You're right, Naomi, that sometimes friends come with a whole lot. But you do find that community. You find that small community that does work for you and that will encourage you, and not just encourage you, but hold you accountable. Because I don't want no yes corner. I didn't live long enough. I didn't have the yes corner. Now I need the
Right,
people who gonna really rock with me and hold me accountable
right.
for my actions, hold me accountable for my voice, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, and when I speak my voice out of line, I want friends that will say you out of line.
Right, right.
I want friends that will say you out of line. And so I
Of
think
course.
you asked a question earlier, is it harder to get friends when you get older? I don't think it's harder to get friends. I think you just get wise and realize that you just need a small circle of real, true friends
Mhm.
that you know that are going to speak truth to you and hold you to your truth.
Mhm.
Lovey Ajade said this too. She said, you can't please everybody. So you might as well just speak your truth. She said, because at the end of the day, basically, you answer yourself. Nobody else matters. So at the end of the day, you got to deal with your truth, right? Can nobody else deal with your truth but you? And so articulate your voice. We can't be afraid to allow our voices to be heard. We have something to say. And I encourage everyone. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and Danielle, we're going to have to finish this up. We're up done an hour. I can't believe we've been on here an hour. Um, wow, if you don't mind coming in a couple of more weeks, in 2 weeks, and we can finish up our conversation, that would be great.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, there's so much more we can talk about with and encouraging women to walk in this influence that they have. And in the political realm and the school realm, I would really like to spend time in helping our women begin to articulate those voices in areas that need to make a difference.
Mhm.
So 2 minutes, can you just give them a couple of quick points? And then, yeah, we'll be getting ready to get out of here.
Yeah, I just say recognize that women have a direct connection to the divine. The feelings that you have are legit. Uh, Pray on it, meditate on it, say, God, what does this mean? Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away because society says, whatever they say about women. Step into your full power. A book that I absolutely love by an ancestor, Sabantu Somé, Women's Wisdom from the Heart of Africa. I mean, if you want to talk about womanhood, that book is really, really empowering to recognize that when you lead, um, that is a God-given gift,
Yeah.
right? And that is us living into our full power as women.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'll leave y'all with that.
So Wonderful. Danielle, thank you so much for being with me, my friend. I have enjoyed myself. I wish we didn't have to end our conversation, but we will pick our conversation up in 2 weeks. Listen, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Do me a favor, share this video. I believe that there is great information that can empower us as women to walk out our truth, to use our voice to influence a dying and disturbed world. So until we meet again, listen, I love you. Jesus loves you. And I pray that you all be safe. Until then, God bless you. Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome. Bye.